Hello, everyone. Enjoy these relaxing yet powerful stories of resilience and triumph. A well-dressed white woman cried out in panic that her purse had been stolen, and in her panic, her suspicious gaze was directed at her, the only black woman standing nearby.
It was you. You took my purse.
The accusation was absurd, like a knife piercing through the air, right in the midst of hundreds of eyes focused on her. She tried to stay calm, tried to explain that it was a mistake, but her words fell on deaf ears. 3 policemen appeared, and instead of finding out the truth, they immediately sided with the rich woman. The prejudice was evident in the eyes and tone of the leading policeman. He didn't need evidence. He just needed her skin color and the woman's accusation to convict her. The insults and insults began to pour out, and the cold metal clanged as the handcuffs tightened around her wrists. She, a federal agent, was handcuffed, treated like a lowly thief in the middle of the airport, in front of everyone. Humiliation and anger welled up, but her professional discipline prevented her from resisting with force. When the police searched her, what they found was not her stolen wallet. It was something else entirely. Something that left all 3 police officers dumbfounded, their faces drained of color. What happens next? Listen to the full story and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more shocking twists and stories. A stream of passengers poured out of the jet's landing gear at Chicago's O'Hare International Airport. Amid the crowd, FBI Special Agent Naomi Sinclair let out a sigh of relief, trying to shake off the fatigue of a nearly 3-hour flight from Washington, D.C. The trip to the Financial Crime Conference had been rewarding, but she was just looking forward to getting back to her apartment in Chicago and stopping by the local FBI office to finish some paperwork. At 35, Naomi possesses an intelligent, sharp appearance and a quiet confidence. She wears a simple but neat office outfit, black trousers and a vest, her long black hair, her face lightly made up. She only carries a business bag and a compact suitcase, easy to move in the crowd. According to her professional habits, her eyes always scan quickly around, observing everyone and everything, unconsciously assessing the situation. As the line of people began to slow in the area just outside the boarding gate, a scream rang out from up ahead, right near where Naomi was standing. "Oh my God, no. My wallet. Where is it?" The person who called out was an older white woman, in her 60s, dressed in expensive designer clothes and sparkling jewelry. Her name was Eleanor Holloway, and her expression was one of panic and anger. She was frantically rummaging through her large Hermes Birkin bag, but clearly couldn't find what she was looking for. In her panic, her eyes scanned the people closest to her. Then they stopped on Naomi Sinclair, the only black woman standing next to her at that moment. A vindictive suspicion, fueled by latent prejudice, flashed in her eyes. Without a second thought, she pointed the diamond-ringed finger at Naomi. "It was you," she shouted, her voice shrill and determined, drawing the attention of everyone around her. "It was you. You walked right past me when I got off the plane. You picked my pocket. Give me back my wallet." Naomi was stunned. The sudden and absurd accusation was like a bucket of cold water to her face. Before she could even process it, a complete stranger had accused her of stealing in public. "Ma'am," she tried to keep her voice clear and professional, "there must be some mistake. I didn't take anything from you. Perhaps you should check your bag more carefully." But Mrs. Holloway had no intention of listening to explanations. She had convinced herself that Naomi was the culprit. "Mistake, don't pretend. I know you're kind. She looks nice, but she's a thief. Where's the security? Where's the police? Get her," she yelled, adding to the chaos. The commotion quickly attracted the attention of 3 airport police officers patrolling nearby. In the lead was Officer Dave Rourke, a white man in his late 40s, with gray hair and a weathered expression, but with a somewhat smug and unfriendly look in his eyes. Behind him were Officer Kevin Riley, a young green-looking white man, and Officer Maria Sanchez, a white woman in her 30s, who looked a little more professional than the other 2. They quickly approached the crowd gathered around Naomi and Mrs. Holloway. "What's going on here?" Officer Rourke asked, his voice full of authority. His eyes swept over the well-dressed Mrs. Holloway, who was crying and pointing, and then settled on Naomi, the black woman standing opposite him, her face trying to look calm but clearly on the defense. Rourke's preconceptions immediately told him which side to take. "The police are here." "Great," Mrs. Holloway exclaimed happily. She picked my wallet. Just as we got off the plane, there was cash and credit cards in it. Catch." She gave an emotional account of the incident, repeatedly claiming Naomi was the culprit without any evidence. Rourke didn't even look at Naomi for an explanation or a question. He turned to her, his voice full of authority, and ordered, "You heard what she said. Give me back my wallet right now. Don't make us have to resort to force." Naomi felt her blood rush to her head. The officer's blatant bias and generalizations were beyond belief. "Officer," she said, trying to keep her voice from shaking with anger, "I repeat, I did not take anyone's wallet. This is a huge misunderstanding. She should check her belongings, or you can check the security cameras at the gate. I am absolutely innocent." Rourke sneered, a sneer of contempt. "Oh, now you're pretending to be innocent, asking to check the cameras. This is an old trick. I know you well enough to pickpocket at the airport. Dress up a little to fool people, right?" He used derogatory words, equating her with criminals based on the color of her skin, and Mrs. Holloway's baseless accusations. Officer Riley stood behind Rourke, nodding along with his boss. Officer Sanchez seemed to frown at Rourke's words, but she said nothing, just stood there watching. The insult was too much for Naomi to bear. "Officer Rourke," she said, her voice cold, her eyes fixed on him, "you are making baseless accusations. You are making discriminatory and derogatory statements. I demand that you conduct yourself professionally and respect my civil rights." Naomi's harsh words and fearless demeanor infuriated Rourke. He felt his authority challenged by a black bitch he despised. "Professional," he roared. "You dare lecture me and talk about civil rights? A criminal like you has no rights. You're even showing signs of rebellion." Things escalated rapidly. Rourke turned to his two subordinates. "Riley, Sanchez, handcuff her. For theft and resisting arrest, take her to the station." "You have no right to do that," Naomi protested fiercely as Riley and Sanchez approached. "I am innocent. You have no proof." But her words only added fuel to the fire. Riley and Sanchez, under Rourke's orders, did not hesitate to use force to restrain her. Naomi tried to maintain her dignity, not attacking, but she was not easy to be captured by them so unreasonably. A small struggle took place right in the middle of the lobby, in front of dozens of curious eyes and phones raised to film. Finally, Naomi was subdued. Her arms were brutally twisted behind her back. The cold metal clanged as the handcuffs tightened around her wrists. A sharp pain and a crushing humiliation washed over her. She was being treated like a real criminal, framed, publicly humiliated simply because she was in the wrong place at the wrong time and had a skin color that made it easy to blame. Mrs. Holloway watched with a smug smile on her face, fully convinced that justice had been served. Rourke stepped closer to the handcuffed Naomi, looking her up and down triumphantly. "There's no denying it now," he said, his voice dripping with glee. "Let's see if you can still talk big in the station. You should be in jail to stop your stealing." He turned to the officers. "Take her away." Naomi gritted her teeth, fighting back tears. She knew she had to do something. This couldn't go on. As Riley and Sanchez prepared to take Naomi away, Rourke suddenly stopped. Perhaps he wanted to be sure, to find concrete evidence to support his accusation, an arrest, or simply wanted to humiliate Naomi once more. "Wait," Rourke ordered. "Search her. The wallet must be hidden somewhere. Sanchez, you do it." He assigned the female officer to do the search, perhaps because of protocol, or simply because he wanted to avoid direct contact. Officer Sanchez approached Naomi, looking slightly uncomfortable but obedient. She began the routine search, checking her pocket. Naomi stood still, enduring the intrusion with remarkable restraint, but her gaze had turned cold and sharp. As Sanchez reached inside Naomi's suit jacket, her fingers brushed against something hard, metallic, contained within a small leather wallet. She was a little surprised because it didn't feel like a regular wallet. She carefully pulled the object out. It was a black leather wallet, the kind typically used to hold cards. Sanchez opened the flap. Inside, under the clear plastic, was not cash or credit cards, but a shiny gold metal badge, intricately engraved with an eagle and the unmistakable words, FED-E. Next to it was an official FBI identification card, with Naomi's photo, her full name, Special Agent Naomi Sinclair, and other credentials. Officer Sanchez froze as if electrocuted. She stared at the badge and ID, then looked up at Naomi, her eyes wide with shock and horror. Her face paled. She turned to Rourke and Riley, her voice stuttering and shaking. "Boss? Rourke? Riley? Look at this." She held up the wallet, containing the FBI badge in front of her two male colleagues. Rourke and Riley curiously moved closer to examine the badge. When their eyes met the FBI badge and the words, both their faces changed. The anger, smugness, and triumph of a moment ago vanished in an instant, replaced by utter shock, disbelief, and then utter horror as they realized what they had done. Rourke's face was as white as a sheet. Cold sweat began to break out on his forehead and temples. He stared at the badge, then looked up at Naomi, his mouth open but unable to form words for several seconds. FBI, he finally managed, his voice cracking and shaking uncontrollably. Agent? Agent? No. No way. This is fake, right? Riley was worse. He stood there frozen, ashen-faced. His limbs began to shake. He looked at the badge, then at Naomi, then down at the hands he had used to cuff the woman. A terrible fear filled his mind. The three officers now realized the terrible mistake they had made. Not only had they wrongly framed, insulted and illegally arrested an innocent citizen, but that person was also a federal agent. The consequences of their actions would go beyond a reprimand. The fear of losing his job, being prosecuted, even going to jail, completely broke Rourke. He rushed in front of Naomi, almost kneeling, his attitude changing. 80 degrees, the arrogance from before disappeared, replaced by a pitiful pleading. Sir, Agent Sinclair, I'm sorry. 1,000 apologies. Rourke stammered, his face pale, his voice filled with tears and belated remorse. This is just a terrible misunderstanding. A terrible mistake. We really don't know who you are. He turned to Riley and Sanchez, shouting in a voice shaking with panic. What are you two standing there for? Uncuff them. Uncuff the agents right now. Hurry. Do you want to go to jail or not? Riley and Sanchez jumped, fumbling for the handcuff keys. Their hands were shaking as they struggled to undo the handcuffs that were tightly around Naomi's wrists. Meanwhile, Rourke continued to plead, trying to blame the situation. It's that woman. She kept yelling. We were under pressure. Misinformation. Please forgive me. Please don't report this to the higher-ups. We'll lose everything. Please ... Naomi stood still, letting them uncuff her. She slowly brought her hands forward, rubbing her wrists, which were red with handcuff marks. Her expression remained cold, showing no sign of accepting their apologies or plea. The humiliation and anger were still there, but now it was covered by the calm of someone who knew she had the upper hand. Naomi said nothing, reaching up to straighten her askew vest. She calmly took the wallet, containing her badge and ID from Sanchez's trembling hands, carefully placing it back inside her jacket. Her cold gaze swept over the three policemen who stood cowering in fear, waiting for her judgment. But Naomi didn't waste time scolding or threatening them. She knew the most effective way to handle the situation. She quietly pulled out her work cell phone from her bag. Rourke, Riley, and Sanchez watched her every move with bated breath. The fear in their eyes grew. They didn't know who she was calling, but it wasn't good news for them. Naomi's fingers moved quickly across the screen, finding a number in her contacts. She put the phone to her ear. Chief Thompson. Naomi's voice rang out, even but with a seriousness that could not be ignored. This is FBI Agent Sinclair. There was a brief pause as she listened to the other end of the line. Then she continued. I'm at O'Hare International Airport, gate B32. There's been a pretty serious incident involving 3 of your officers. Their names are Rourke, Riley, and Sanchez. She recounted the events briefly, objectively, but completely. Mrs. Holloway's false accusation of stealing her purse, Officer Rourke's biased and insulting words, the 3 of them ignoring her explanations and evidence, and illegally handcuffing and searching her. She didn't need to add emotion. The incident itself was serious enough. I demand that you send someone with authority down here to deal with this matter immediately. Naomi ended the call with a clear and decisive request. She hung up, then looked straight at the 3 police officers, whose faces were drained of blood. Her silence at this moment was more terrifying than any scolding. Minutes later, as expected, a man in plain clothes with an air of authority, accompanied by 2 other senior police officers, appeared on the scene. It was Chief of Police Michael Thompson. He had a stern, professional appearance and a sharp gaze. Perhaps he and Naomi had worked together in the past. or at least knew each other through the FBI and local police channels. Michael Thompson approached, looked at Naomi with concern, then turned to look at the three officers under his command, with eyes full of disappointment and anger. He didn't need much explanation to grasp the nature of the problem, from Naomi's call and the condition of the other three. "Agent Sinclair, are you okay?" he asked Naomi first. "I'm fine, Michael," Naomi replied, keeping her voice professional. "Just a little unpleasant surprise." Thompson nodded, then turned to his three subordinates. "Rourke, Riley, Sanchez, hand over your badges, weapons and radios immediately. All three of you are suspended on the spot, pending the outcome of an official investigation." His voice was firm, excluding any resistance. The three policemen trembled as they followed orders, their faces bowed to the ground, not daring to look at anyone. Their careers were hanging by a thread. After the three men were stripped of their equipment and taken aside by other senior officers, Thompson turned back to Naomi, his voice filled with remorse. "Agent Sinclair, on behalf of the entire Chicago Police Department, I sincerely apologize to you for this unacceptable and disgraceful behavior. This was a serious incident that went completely against our policies and procedure. I am committed to a thorough, fair, internal investigation, and to taking strong action against those involved." Just then, another airport security officer rushed over, clutching a beige woman's purse. "Mrs. Holloway," the officer said to the woman still standing nearby, "we just found your purse. It was stuck at the bottom of your bag, probably hidden by other items." Mrs. Holloway was stunned when she received her purse back, opened it, and found it still there. She looked up at Naomi, then at the police officers, her face showing confusion and perhaps belated shame. Her accusation was completely false. Thompson sighed, shaking his head at the complexity and absurdity of the situation. He turned back to Naomi and said, "We'll take you somewhere more private so you can give a detailed report. Again, I apologize." Naomi nodded in agreement. Justice had been served, but she knew the story was not over yet. The Chicago Police Department's internal investigation into the incident involving FBI Special Agent Naomi Sinclair was conducted expeditiously and seriously under the close supervision of Police Chief Thompson, and with participation of representatives from the FBI's Office of Professional Responsibility. To ensure objectivity, Agent Sinclair's detailed testimony was central to the investigation. She provided a coherent account, detailing each of the three officers' misconduct, the jump to conclusions based on baseless accusations, Rourke's apparent bias and discrimination, the disregard for basic verification procedures, the insulting language, the unlawful handcuffing and search. The most important piece of evidence is the video and audio recordings from Rourke, Riley, and Sanchez's body cameras. The tape faithfully and irrefutably captures the entire incident, from their approach to the scene, Rourke's arrogant attitude, his contemptuous word, Naomi's attempts to explain but being ignored, the brutal handcuffing, to the moment of horror and cowardly begging of all three when they discovered the FBI badge. The tape also clearly shows Naomi's innocence and the error in Miss Holloway's initial accusation, even though she was not the main subject of this investigation. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Rourke, Riley, and Sanchez had no choice but to admit their wrongdoing during their internal affairs interview. Rourke attempted to blame the pressure of work and misguided professional instincts, while Riley and Sanchez testified that they were largely following Rourke's orders, but also admitted that they did not intervene or question the legality of those orders. The conclusion of the investigation was clear. All three officers had seriously violated a series of regulations and professional procedures, including abuse of power, unlawful detention, discriminatory and unprofessional behavior and language that seriously affected the reputation of the police force and violated the civil rights of Agent Sinclair. However, in making the final disciplinary decision, Chief Thompson and the CPD Disciplinary Board, after considering many factors, which may include pressure from the police union, the department's existing policies on reform and training, or the desire to seek a more constructive rather than simply punitive solution, came to a decision that was not entirely unlike previous similar cases. Instead of immediately firing them, or referring them to the prosecutor's office for criminal prosecution. Even though their actions may have constituted a crime, they decided to apply a special form of discipline, which was meant to be challenging and re-educational. One extended suspension. Riley and Sanchez continued to be suspended without pay for a period of 1 year to give them time to reflect on their actions and feel the initial consequence. Following the suspension, all three are required to attend a special training program, lasting exactly 1 year. This program is designed specifically for officers who have committed serious violations related to bias, abuse of power, and lack of professional skills. It includes legal knowledge and civil rights, update and review knowledge of federal and state laws, civil rights regulations, and limits on police powers, emotion management and communication skills, training in anger management techniques, de-escalation in confrontational situations, and effective, respectful communication with people of all backgrounds. Identifying and combating bias, in-depth classes, discussions, and exercises on implicit bias, racism, cultural diversity and their negative impact on law enforcement. They may be required to write essays and engage in difficult conversations. Situational practice. Simulate complex, real-life situations under the close supervision of trainers and psychologists, requiring them to properly apply the learned procedures and skills. Community engagement. They can be asked to participate in volunteer activities or meet in dialogue with community leaders from diverse populations to build understanding and empathy. 3. Evaluation and final decision. During the 1-year IPTP, Riley and Sanchez's learning and behavioral changes will be continuously monitored and evaluated by a monitoring board. At the end of the program, the board will make a final decision. If they successfully complete the program, demonstrate significant positive change, and commit to not reoffending, they may be considered for reinstatement, but will be subject to close supervision for an extended period afterward. If they fail to show progress, fail the tests, or show any other signs of misconduct during their training, they will be permanently dismissed from the police force without a second chance. This decision has caused much controversy within the CPD and outside. Some people believe that this is a humane solution, creating an opportunity for real correction and reform, but others are concerned that this is just a disguised form of leniency, not enough of a deterrent, and can easily make wrongdoers return to the force without truly changing their nature. A few weeks after the disciplinary decision was announced, Special Agent Naomi Sinclair sat in her office at FBI headquarters in Chicago, looking out the large glass windows at the city. She had just finished reading a detailed report on the investigation and consequences for the 3 police officers involved in the incident at O'Hare Airport. A complex feeling took hold of her. On the one hand, she felt relieved that their wrongdoing had been exposed, that they had been suspended from work and were facing a lengthy probationary period. Justice, in a way, had been served. Her actions had not been in vain. But on the other hand, she couldn't help but feel a little uneasy, a little skeptical about this form of discipline. A year's suspension and retraining. Was that much time in classes really enough to change the racial biases that were so deeply ingrained in someone like Rourke? Was it enough to make Riley and Sanchez braver in questioning their superiors and refusing wrongful orders? Or was this just a half-baked solution, a way for the system to avoid the difficult decision of permanent dismissal or criminal prosecution, a way to appease public opinion and union pressure? She knows for a fact that, without her FBI badge, the story would have been very different. She would have been taken to the station, charged, and faced an uphill legal battle for justice. The badge saved her from the worst consequences, but it only served to highlight the inequities in the system, where justice sometimes depends on who you are, what you do, and whether you have power. What about ordinary people? Those without badges, without voices, without resources? How do they fare when faced with abusers like Rourke? Is this form of discipline enough of a deterrent to prevent similar incidents from happening in the future? Naomi sighed and turned back to her computer screen.
Work was still on her mind. The airport incident had been an unforgettable experience, a painful reminder of the challenges she and others like her faced every day. It had reinforced her resolve to fight for justice and equality, not just in her job as an FBI agent, but in her life. But the question of the fate of work, Riley and Sanchez, and of the true effectiveness of the challenge training remains open. Will they really change? Or is this just an opportunity to temporarily avoid the most serious consequences, so that one day, those prejudices and wrongdoings will have the opportunity to rise again on another victim, someone who is not lucky enough to have the badge of power to defend themselves? The fight against injustice and prejudice, Naomi realizes, is still a very long and challenging road ahead. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. If you like this content, please click like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next meaningful stories, because tomorrow we will have another meaningful story for you.